Barcelona are princes of the Champions League phase. I wanted to say that they were kings of the league phase. That sounds so much better. Something about the Kings League. There might be something to do with Gerard Piqué and things like that already have that idea in my head. But no, Barcelona are second in the Champions League phase, which if you had told me that would be the case with 36 other teams or 35 other teams competing at the start of the season, I think you and every other Kool-Aid should have said that, yes, I will take that any day of the week. So as disappointed as you might be for a match that you feel like at home Barcelona should have won, Barcelona got the result they needed, and that is they kept one of those top two spots along with Liverpool. Did Liverpool give them an opportunity by losing to PSV today 3-2 and giving them basically first place on a platter? Sure. But again, I'm not that disappointed. It's all about the long-term goals of winning trophies. And today's result did not change Barcelona's chances. They also didn't get any hurt. And I think if anything, that was the most important thing. And they also, for a lot of different reasons, we still have to talk about the tactics of his five headlines because they took on a really good side in the Champions League with a lot to talk about. Welcome to episode 653 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and please, if you haven't yet, subscribe, become a member. Firstly, on Big Up, where I do these watch-alongs, the tactical breakdowns, have a lot of fun over there, as well as the YouTube page. We give a like to the video, comment, give a good rating on the podcast apps, or like my two new top-tier patrons in Tiana and Nicholas, become a patron. Help me to continue to make these shows, get something on the merch store, or become a member for free on Facebook, on Discord. Follow me on social media. There's so many ways to get involved in the community, and I have new and exciting things planned, as I always do in this year 2025. But let's kick off 2025, or the final match of the last month of 2025, with the five headlines from Barcelona's 2-2 draw with Atalanta. Headline one is Atalanta's different look. I feel like sometimes when I do these five headlines, because I have to react to them so quickly, I don't give you the top tier tactical breakdowns that you want to see. When I bring on the Purist or Domagoy or some of my favorite Barcelona-related tactics geniuses in the community, I know they can add that, but hey, I sometimes need to stand up for myself too and say, I can give you the tactical breakdown that you come here for. So with this first headline, we are diving right into the tactics board. So why we dive right into the tactics board to kick off the first half, and basically for what is the first half. Yes, there were highlights, but it came down to how these two teams were feeling each other out. Atalanta was going to trust, as Hansi Flick accurately said in yesterday's press conference, Atalanta were going to trust themselves in their man-to-man marking. They were going to trust themselves with their high energy, with their press, and they were going to make sure they turned Barcelona over in advantageous spots on the field and take advantage of that space when Barcelona would make mistakes or wouldn't be as quick through their press as they needed to be. And I think for Atalanta, the way that they could, we'll say, take advantage of this is with that center back pairing, who I think should be focused on quite a bit here in Araujo. And if you're watching on YouTube, yes, I know it says Astralaga. It's because the update. But between Eric Garcia and Araujo and then Koundé at right back, that is where Atalanta was going to press. They were going to try to force the ball into that right corner for Koundé and Araujo because Lamine Yamal had to stay forward to create that width and to make sure Zappacosta couldn't completely come at Koundé, and Lamine Yamal also at different times had to drop deeper to defend because of how high Zappacosta. So you see the press here from Atalanta, again, if you're watching this on YouTube, but what they did play was a 3-2-5 basically, and we saw this under Xavi too. This is how he wanted to set up his press, with a 3-2-5, and you push those five forwards with the wing backs. Now the difference is between Xavi, he would want to use his wingers in the front three for the largest amount of width, but in this Atalanta system, Gasperini wants to use the two wideouts in Bellanova on the right and Zappacosta on the left. So you're seeing here that, in theory, on that press, that Atalanta are pressing in a 5v4 if De Jong and Pedri can't find space. And then the two defensive midfielders today in De Roon and Ederson were man-marking De Jong and Pedri. This is more about Atalanta even than Barcelona. So with the two defensive midfielders then marking up man-to-man with Barcelona's defensive midfielders, and then it was that combination of whether it was whoever was in the middle to drop in, depending on where Gavi was going to be. So if Gavi would try to come back and help, you needed Gavi, honestly, to create that space. The problem is, this run from Gavi, and again, for those listening, it's a run through the middle over the top. The problem here with this run from Gavi is that we've seen, if it's Ter Stegen, deliver that ball into Gavi. We've seen Iñaki Peña a little bit less. But if Cubarsí is starting on the right, we have seen that pass into Gavi, or the 10, whoever it may be, from Cubarsí breaking through that press and that midfield line of pressure to the number 10 diving in. Because again, that back three for Atalanta, or any team that's going to press at a back three, they're man-marked as well, up with Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, and Lewandowski, while Barcelona are trying to get out of their own half. So the issue here is that Araujo doesn't really have that ball. And Eric Garcia playing on the left, I should say, instead of the right, with his right foot, his left foot isn't confident with that pass. It is a tough pass to make. So that meant that Barcelona was kind of just shuffling it around along their back line, using the goalkeeper and having to try to play out of width. Which meant that when it went back to this right side or right corner of the field, that meant that Koundé, quite often, and this is hardly his fault, but that meant that Koundé was getting double teamed and the ball was getting forced back into deeper positions. Raul would have to drop even deeper, and that is exactly what Atalanta wanted with their press. So when you see that first half action and say, hey, Barcelona had 72% of possession, they should have been on the front foot, but that's not necessarily the case, because I don't think the way that this team was set up, and this isn't even Hansi Flick's fault, this is just rotation and personnel, that Atalanta were a team that really did match up well for what Hansi Flick wants to do. And that pass in particular through the middle from the back line, either the goalkeeper or the center backs, into that number 10 that creates space. That meant, though, that the room to be created was going to be between that double pivot and then that back three that Atalanta was playing. So that's why you saw in that first half, Lamine Yamal and Rafinha were switching places from the left to the right, and their movement was essential to the rare opportunities that Barcelona had in that first half. So let's talk about a few of those. Again, Rafinha's movement being the antidote to the man-marking system, because you're forcing that back three, who always have to be focused on Lewandowski for things over the top, but then they have to be communicating and switching off with two of the most dangerous wingers, one with their legs, and obviously one who's maybe arguably the most dangerous player in world football with ball to feet. So I'm not saying that he's as good as Mo Salah. Mo Salah is probably going to win the Ballon d'Or this season over Lamine Yamal, but Lamine Yamal is probably, to me, the most dangerous winger when the ball is played to feet that we have in world football right now. 7th minute, the goal-saving tackle by Bellanova on Rafinha. Lamine Yamal on the break here with a great pass. So when Barcelona did find space, it was a bit dangerous for Atalanta to deal with. And then in the 11th minute, Zappacosta, again, getting forward against Koundé, dealing with that 2v1, having to choose between, and Zappacosta adding that width out wide. The cross comes in, and Balde hits it off of Szczesny, so a little bit of luck for Barca early. Then Lamine Yamal with a long shot the other way, wasn't too far off. 14th minute, Balde, a nice ball for De Jong over the top, and he flicked it on to Lewandowski, but he couldn't control it. Lewandowski, come on, man. And then the ref, I will say at that point in the game, in the early going, yes, it was a tactical breakdown and masterclass from both sides, but the ref was also letting some of that physicality go in the first half that he did kind of shore up there in the second. Barca's press in the 15th minute on the other side of things was working to good effect, because in the same way that Atalanta wanted to get forward and press themselves, Barcelona were able to put pressure on that being the Atalanta goalkeeper and then those three center backs. And those three center backs, I should say, aren't as confident with the ball, or is just as not confident as the ball as Araujo and even Koundé and Eric Garcia were today. So Barcelona's press working to good effect as well at times. And then at that point, 15th, 16th minute, Barcelona, I thought, did finally settle into the game, and they were finding more spaces in between that Atalanta press. As I said, the worry was that corner with Koundé and Araujo, and we did see some moments in that first half, though, that kind of foreshadowed the second half. Lamine Yamal, De Jong was committing some fouls, but I also thought De Jong, I had said it, and we'll bring him up again in the second half if we want. I felt if you have that chart of like neutral good, neutral chaos, you know what it is. You're on the internet. But I felt like De Jong was a neutral good today. There were times when he fouled, but I thought his defensive positioning against a really tough man-marking team was what it needed to be. He would drop to the center backs when he needed to be, but he also, I didn't think, crowded the center backs. When there was space for him to be the runner in the midfield, he did that. He released the ball quickly, so I thought it was a good day from De Jong, and I don't think Marc Cossetto would have been any better or I don't know, worse, but I don't think Castro would have been better. I think it would have been a wash, or De Jong made it even better than Castro today in that position. 35th minute, again, a little more luck from Barcelona. The ball played into the Cataler, who was my player to watch, a player to worry about. Eric Garcia might have had the tackle, but Araujo reacted to make the tackle because maybe Eric wasn't going to make the tackle because the Cataler was turning. But because Araujo also didn't make the tackle, the ball falls to Zappacosta, who is offside. My question for you in the comments or hitting me up on social media if you're listening, who would have been blamed for this? Would it have been Eric? Would it have been Araujo? Or would it have been Szczesny staying on his line? I'm interested to hear where you put the blame here if this had been a goal, because I'm leaning towards Araujo not trusting Eric Garcia and Szczesny. Szczesny didn't move on his line, so I don't know. Maybe it's Araujo for being too reactive, and then that ball just falling in the right spot to Zappacosta. 39th minute, Gabi goes down. Was worried about him with an injury, but he was able to shake it off, played through, so it doesn't seem like a problem, maybe just a stinger there. And then as we neared halftime, Rafinha with a good first half, I will say, a late shot at the keeper, but I also saw some dialogue, people arguing on whether or not Rafinha was good in the first half. I thought, as I said, his movement along that back line for Atalanta was essential to making space for Lamine Yamal, and Atalanta, it was tough to beat them over the top as well, but I thought Rafinha was where he needed to be to have Barcelona have good things happen for them in the second half. Atalanta started to get a little bit more tired, and that wound up being the case. Headline 2 is energy out of the half. So now that we've already done the tactical breakdown and you have an idea of why Atalanta are a Champions League quality side and why the tactics I thought were a really good test for Barcelona, very much like Benfica. Like, there are good teams in the Champions League. So my argument for you is not that Barcelona were outplayed by Atalanta, but I thought like at times that game was 50-50. It ended as a draw, and that could be a fair result in a game that Barcelona, I don't think they were going all out for this one, but I thought it was a really good test for them to see a different variation of a team that they really have not seen yet this season. And they came out in the second half having, as I said, felt like there were times when Atalanta could have taken advantage of their weaknesses. They wound up taking advantage of Atalanta's weaknesses to start that second half with a goal. 47th minute here, Rafinha and Lamine Yamal, the immediate response out of the locker room. The best passing combination of the game as well for Barcelona. Balde, who is still good, by the way. I think maybe we have to accept this season that Balde is just taking that step forward, and where his floor is now is just where he is. And if that's just his floor, this continues to be exciting. I loved what he said yesterday in the press conference too. Balde kind of sticking up for himself and saying, hey, I'm 21. Everybody relax. Players can get better. Kind of pantomimes what I've said about Balde too. So yeah, Balde's in a good moment. It's a credit to all of us who never left Balde Island that he is not coming into his own, but yeah, this is a good Balde. So Balde from the back, one touch to Lewandowski. Rafinha perfectly into space. The cross for Lamine Yamal. First touch beats the keeper. So yes, Lewandowski didn't really do much in this game at all. This is probably his only positive moment, but what a positive moment it was. The one touch to set up Rafinha's run. As I said, then the cross for Lamine Yamal. And then for the Lamine Yamal touches, to talk about this, he receives the cross. First touch beats the keeper. Second touch takes him away from the defender. And then the third touch pokes it into the net. On the other side, Barcelona were playing with fire, though. Koundé and Araujo set the trap. The Pasalic, foreshadowing things later in the contest, comes from a deeper position. But if the center forward moved towards the ball, it probably would have come back anyway. Szczesny had it saved, but that would have been something at halftime that Flick probably would have warned about. And honestly, I feel like in the training sessions, this is something that Flick probably was warning about, that because they don't really play with a natural number 9, it's that 10 or Pasalic who's going to come from deep lying positions, and you have to be wary of his runs. And this is something that we would see then for that second goal. Headline 3 is the power of Ederson. Sometimes, as I've said with Benfica and other matches here in the Champions League, when you're in the Champions League, you got Champions League quality players on other teams, and sometimes goals are just based on quality more than, we'll call it, mistakes. Barcelona were trying to navigate a game against a really good team, and you knew that Atalanta would have their chances as well. The 60th minute, though, this is where they probably 100% should have gone up 2-0, and that would have changed this game. This is one of the more egregious misses of the season because, my goodness, Szczesny punches it right to Lamine Yamal. And when I say, oh goodness, I mean Barcelona don't finish, but I also mean Lamine Yamal. My goodness, man of the match for me. Not only because of this chance that doesn't happen or the goal, but just Lamine Yamal, second half especially, was 100% in his bag. On this counterattack, he attracts 4 white shirts to him, 3 jump to him, and he winds up using a pass to bypass the fourth. It's then Rafinha and Lewandowski in a 2v1 situation. Rafinha with the pass, and Lewandowski just could not get it out of his feet. So yeah, frustrating from 2 of the top 3 in the scoring charts in the Champions League, but what are you going to do? 63rd minute, Lamine Yamal again. Rafinha lost it, but got it right back. Lamine Yamal's shot gets stopped by the keeper, but as I said, he was another level after the goal. He just seemed to find the match, was playing with a bit more gusto because I think he felt like, hey, yeah, this one's ours at this point. Then the 1-1, 67th minute. I actually think Barcelona, as I said, had pretty good transition D there. They forced the ball out wide, didn't give up the goal line cross, but this is just a rocket from Ederson. The dribble move on Gabi, limited space, but a whole lot of power. So as I said, it's 1-1, but you tip your cap. And if anything, Barcelona should have finished their chances on the other side. And then we don't talk about this goal mattering the way it did. Now, headline 4, Calamitous, Atalanta defending. Yes, it's the Champions League and teams play with quality, but nobody is perfect or nobody's perfect. You know that in the Champions League. No team outside of Liverpool for their first 7 matches, because yes, today they lost, but I had a look at that team, and I was told in my chat on Big Up to take a look at that match, and yes, they were absolutely playing no one of note, with the exception of Gakpo and Harvey Elliott. There's almost nobody else in the rotation outside of Robertson at the back as well, but yeah, that was it. So complete, just, we don't care from Liverpool. But aside from them, everybody else in the Champions League have shown cracks in what they're doing. 69th minute, Fermin Lopez, Ferran Torres, and Kubarsi on for Gabi, Lewandowski, and Eric Garcia. Then the 2-1 in the 72nd minute. What a defensive breakdown this is by Atalanta. As I just said, as good as teams are in the Champions League at the top, they can be just as bad, and nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. How was Araujo that wide open at the back post? I have no idea. Rafinha delivers a cross in from the corner. Kubarsi set the screen for Araujo, and he wasn't even set up in the right position at all, and De Ketelaere, was he supposed to have a man? Because he didn't have a man at all. Araujo isn't going to have an easier finish on a set piece, maybe in his whole career. I mean, this was so wide open. He didn't even have to jump. He just stayed on the ground, powerful neck, biting the back of the net behind the goalkeeper. Somewhere, AC Milan's Paolo Maldini, I mean, maybe he didn't really like Atalanta, so he might be smiling, but as somebody who probably defends Italian defending, somewhere Paolo Maldini is probably crying as someone who wants to see successful Italian defending. So yeah, not great from Atalanta. At that point, Barcelona are up 2-1. And then headline 5 is settling for second. Yeah, I said there's a little bit of a disappointment in the macro, in the big picture. I'm not that upset. It was a draw, but this second goal from Atalanta, not great in the 79th minute. Just poor defending from Barça. They weren't dealing with the pressure well. Late on in that game, they weren't weathering the storm, and Pasalic stays onside here on this run. I talked about that run that he was making up through the middle. Koundé was either soft on the tackle. Araujo probably didn't want to commit the foul from behind. I feel like Chesney didn't want to come off too hard and commit another foul for him, which would be his 4th penalty in 5 matches. So he didn't want to commit the foul either. And then Pasalic winds up just getting past all 3 of them. So this is just poor all-around defending from Barcelona that just did not want to commit a penalty. You felt that they didn't want to commit the PK, and it winds up being a goal instead. So at that point for Barcelona, you just kind of want to settle into the draw. It's Pedri out for Casado, and Atalanta right after that having another quick chance, looking like they were going for it. 84th minute, Barcelona still pushing for the winner. Rafinha a little bit behind on the cross for Torres. And then Scalvini, unfortunately, the Atalanta defender, promising young Italian center back, need to be stretched off. Had just come back from an ACL too. So hopefully that injury isn't a long one for him, whether it's a clavicle or broken shoulder, whatever it may be. Rafinha and Balde then pulling off some skill and stoppage time. Again, Balde and Rafinha, I thought, were both good in this match. Ferran Torres, through a crowd, forced a really tough save, and Balde defended well in transition the other way. And then Pau Victor on for the final moments for Lamine Yamal. Rafinha not far off of the back post on the corner either. Good set-piece deliveries from Rafinha, by the way. So Barcelona wind up settling for the 2-2 draw. Yeah, they could have got first, as I said, but either way, they were going to be facing PSG, Benfica, Monaco, or Brest. 2 teams that Barcelona have already beat this season. You got to make sure you're not afraid of PSG. There's no reason to be afraid of PSG. If that winds up who you're going to have to face, then that's who you have to face. You've got to beat PSG. You got to beat Benfica. You got to beat somebody. And hey, maybe Monaco or Brest wind up getting the upset there. And I think it would be an upset. But certainly, there's a good chance that Barcelona will be facing a French opponent, and if they're not, then they're going to be facing Benfica again in what could be another wild one. One that I hope isn't too wild, I hope it's pretty easy for Barcelona to handle, will be on Sunday morning, 8 a.m. I will have the watch along on Big Up for Barcelona versus Alaves. So it is an early one, folks, especially for those on the East Coast. For those on the West Coast in the U.S., it is super early. But finally, for those in Asia or in Africa, some of my other supporters, or India, you can finally join me at like a reasonable time. So that'll be fun to finally be able to hang out with some of my more global audience. So that'll be fun. Join me on Big Up for that one. And this is also will not be the last time you'll hear from me this week. There were so many things that we didn't get to, not only with these 5 headlines, but to talk about even on the watch along that I want to get to either on a podcast and or with a top 5 on Friday. So it's Unai Hernandez, Baba Kamara, Christensen's injury, Pau Prime, Inigo Martinez extension, Valle. There's just so many different things. And then the stadium, there's a lot of different news to talk about. So you will be hearing from me again in the coming days. So make sure you subscribe everywhere so you don't miss me, because again, there's so much Barcelona news to talk about, especially with the transfer window ending. And as always, until next time, very shortly, I should say, next time, Forza Barça.